Thank you, Zoe. And I'm so excited to do this. I was saying that I'm actually really excited that it's an intimate group. I just did a training 2 weeks ago with 93 people on Zoom and had to put them in personal breakout rooms. So that was interesting. So this is actually very refreshing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So thank you for taking your lunch hour. Hopefully you have a snack next to you. And if not, let this be your snack. So this is building resilience using positive thinking tools. And so before I get started, I really wanted to get a sense of, where you all are. So how confident are you in using positive thinking strategies? 1 being like, you know what, I don't use them at all. 10 being like, I'm great. I just wanted to see what you were going to come in here and say. 5 right in the middle. So if you could throw that in the chat, that gives me a sense of where you all are. So if you can go to the chat and give me your number. So we got some 8, 8, 9. Nice. Okay, 3, 5, 7, 8, 7. Awesome. Okay, 5, 6. All right. 9. Awesome. All right, we got some ones. Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes my number changes daily. All right, so good. So we have a lot of strong people feeling like they have those thinking strategies. And then we got some people in the middle and just only a couple of those that are on the low end. So that just gives me a sense of where you all are today. So hopefully there is something that you can take and glean from, or it's just a reminder of something maybe that you used before and you haven't used it again. So hopefully that can be something that is beneficial to you as well. So what we're going to cover are, 3 barriers that can affect our ability to be resilient. It doesn't keep us from being resilient, but if we allow these types of thinking to, kind of overtake us, it can affect our resilience ability. 3 positive thinking strategies that can help us combat those barriers. And with each of those positive thinking strategies, I will also, offer some simple activities that you can do right away to increase your positivity and optimism on a daily basis if you choose to use those. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. So Zoe did give, a brief introduction, but this is just a little more. So again, I am a co-founder of a dance company, a nonprofit. We're 16 years old, Sweet 16, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, focused on women and girls. And I went to Hampton University for college. I have my undergrad in business management as well as my master's in business. I currently work as a coaching consultant where I coach and facilitate training for 71 different schools in 6 different states, including PA. And I also do work with them in terms of not just coaching their staff, but also coaching their principals and leadership in districts. I am a certified life and leadership coach through the Academy of Creative Coaching. And I also have a certification in personal coaching through the CAP Institute with this emphasis on positive psychology. Go figure. And Destination Life is the name of my LLC that I've had for about 6 years and have been looking to grow it over the last 2 years. All right, so that's just a little bit about me, just so you can know. And I encourage you to take notes because I think note taking is awesome and it helps you really hone in on what you need. So I want you to use a feature that you may have never used on Zoom, and it is called the Annotation Feature. So at the top of your screen, you should see something that says View Options. So take a look at the top of your screen. It should be like gray. If you're on a phone, it may be 3 dots, but you should see something that says Annotate. And I'm like, why don't I see it on my screen?
It's not enabled, I don't think.
I don't see it.
Yeah, you know what? It might not be on Zoe's. It might not be enabled on Zoe's. And that's okay. We won't use it. But it's awesome because if you have Zoom, you can draw on the screen. And that's a fun feature. Yes, it is a fun feature. And it's hilarious to see people do it. But either way, we can look in the chat. So in the chat, go ahead and type in what you believe resilience means to you. So in the chat, what do you believe resilience means? What does it mean to you? Picking yourself up. Thank you, Barbara. Set aside and keep moving ahead. Thank you, Michael. AV, refresh, ability to overcome challenges, ability to cope, staying focused, strong in adversity, not giving up, ability to bounce back from challenges. Awesome. Positive momentum constantly. Yes, all of those. Yep, great examples of what resilience means. And so resilience is defined as the process of adapting well in the face of trauma or tragedy threats or other significant sources of stress. And so the key here is really, how can we make sure we have a process of adapting well, right? Because these things are going to come, but we want to make sure that we have a process in place to help us adapt. And we probably already have some that we kind of do by default, right? But how can we strengthen some of those processes or create ones that are more beneficial to us? Because the good news is that resilience can be built. It's something that can continue to be strengthened over time. But the problem is we believe that it's hard sometimes because life can make it seem like it's really impossible to get over some of our humps. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the barriers that can come to, make it feel like it's impossible. So one common one is scarcity. And I'm sure nobody here has ever experienced scarcity, especially in a time right now, right? We worry about what we don't have. So maybe right now, at some point, you worried about if you had enough food in the freezer, or you had enough toilet paper, or, in your business, okay, do I have enough funds to really keep the contracts that I have right now, or the contractors? So maybe you're thinking about what you don't have. And sometimes that can come to paralyze us and keep us from building the things that we need to build to adapt well, right? So scarcity is one. Barrier two is this fear of failure. Like, oh no, like worst case scenario. So we tend to focus, right, on this worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that can happen? And so you haven't done that, right? So with everything that's going on, my business is going to fail. And maybe for some people that has happened, and maybe your thought is like, I can't build anything ever. Will I ever be able to build something again? And so these are some of the things that come to haunt us and that can come to paralyze us when we are going through things if we don't have a process of helping us adapt well to the change. And so the third barrier would be this lack of personal responsibility. And it's not that, we're professionals, so we understand personal responsibility. But the fact is, when traumatic experiences come, sometimes it feels like, make it go away. Like, why is this happening? Why won't someone do something different so I can live my life better, right? And so a lot of that has come with even this quarantine. It's almost like somebody is making this happen to us. And so that is something that obviously there are some realities connected to it. At the same time, to focus there is not necessarily going to help you adjust well or adapt well to what is ultimately happening in real life. And so with that, the thought is, what does this even mean? This does create negative emotions. And so there is not necessarily anything wrong with negative emotions because it's natural. But the thing about negative emotions is that they're sticky. They're stickier than positive emotions. They tend to lurk. So if you recall ever getting, feedback for improvement, and then alongside of that, you're getting all of these accolades of the things that you do, sometimes we tend to look at the feedback of improvement or what caused us discomfort or what we may have deemed as negative feedback, and that sticks more than really the positive feedback or the accolades that we receive, because negative tends to be just a little more sticky. And so with that, it's like we don't want to fall into this trap of all negative emotions are bad, because sometimes negative emotions help us become creative about a solution. But at the same time, all positive emotions aren't necessarily good either. We can feel really good about something that's actually not good for us or for our benefit. So the point is, how can we have a balance? And that's where positive psychology comes in, because if we can find a balance, it allows us to flourish. Because the things that we talked about, scarcity, when we talked about the lack of personal responsibility, the fear of failure, those are things that are going to come, and they may come to catapult you, but they can also come to keep you stuck. And so how can we find a balance? So it's this concept called the Lasada Line, which is like the positivity ratio. And so it's this concept that there is an optimal balance of positive to a negative emotions, which triggers mental flourishing and an upward development spiral, below which we languish. So the thought is, like, there's this optimal balance of positive to negative emotions that we actually want to have. And if we do have it, it can really trigger mental flourishing. It helps us have more of this developmental spiral up. And we want to experience those spiral ups, especially during those times where we're experiencing traumatic situations, so that we can continue to build, our own resilience. And so you may be thinking like, okay, well, if one bad thing happens, all I need is one positive thing, and 1-to-1 won't cut it. So you actually need a lot more of the things in your life that give you positive emotions to overcome the one negative thing that might be happening. And I would even say more depending on the intensity of the negative thing. So the positive ratio, that is the ratio of positive to negative emotions above which we flourish, is approximately 3-to-1. This means we need to experience roughly 3 times as many positive emotions as negative emotions in order to flourish. And so if we want to flourish, we have to figure out, okay, with all of these negative things that are coming, I can't just do one thing to overcome it or think that that's going to help me be balanced. I have to be a lot more strategic, a lot more planned in how I overcome it, whether it's in my personal life, whether it's in my business, especially if you're leading a team. When you think about that, it's going to do more than just that one pool party or that one breakout room party that we have to help people overcome the things that are keeping them down. So the thought is like enthusiasm has a half-life. So I don't know if you've ever been excited about something at one point and then a couple of days later it wasn't as exciting anymore. And that's why it's important to, how can we have this 3-to-1? So if we have positive emotions, because they're more fleeting and negative emotions are sticky, if we find more frequency of positive emotions, it's more important for our well-being rather than the intensity. And so when I work with my clients at Franklin Covey, I talk a lot about when you want to keep a culture of like harmony among your staff. It's one thing to kind of like throw someone a surprise birthday party one time and like never talk to them for the rest of the year. And sometimes we treat our staff like that. We do that one big thing a quarter and we feel like that should be enough, now get to work. And so the fact is, enthusiasm has a half-life. How can we continuously make sure positive emotions are happening, or we're giving space for those emotions to take place so that we have a balanced well-being, not just personally, but how we can do that in our businesses as well. So what we get to do is flood ourselves, flood our spaces with positive emotions so that we can optimally flourish and adapt well to the changes that are happening. Now, that doesn't mean that we ignore the things that are happening. And I think that there are people that go the other extreme. Well, oh, you know, if we're super positive, that means that we're not looking at what needs to change. On the contrary, you know, we are looking at what needs to change, and positive emotions actually help you be more solution-minded about the changes that need to take place. And let's remember that negative emotions are not bad. They're just sticky. And if we live there, that's going to keep us in a place from actually moving forward with what we need to do to adapt well during this time. And so I want to give you some positive thinking strategies. And so along with these strategies, I have a couple of different actually activities that you can do on your own, or you can do with people that are in your personal life or in your work life. And so one positive thinking strategy is around accomplishment. So accomplishment has a way of helping us really hone in our strengths and not our deficiencies. So this is one way to overcome that scarcity, right? How can we live in this abundant space? Well, sometimes when we think about our accomplishments, whether they're present or past, that gives us confidence to move forward, and it helps us really hone in on what we do well. So, you know, if you're working, you know, in a company and you're thinking about how to keep your employees engaged, well, you know what? We do a lot of things well. Regardless of the climate right now, we know how to do this well. How can we pivot because of what we do well, right? And so these are ways that we can use a positive thinking strategy such as accomplishment to help us speak out of our strengths rather than our deficiencies. And so one of the activities that I think people would really benefit from, I've used it for myself and I've used it with clients, to coach yourself in your strengths. So using writing prompts. So the thing about any of these activities, as you may already know, because I'm sure many of you have been coached before or have gone through things to help you with some of the things that I'm talking about, given the survey from the beginning, a lot of you have some of these strategies. Writing is very helpful for self-reflection and self-awareness. So a lot of these will include writing. So these are some of the writing prompts that I've used that I think are very helpful in honing in on your strengths or in your accomplishments. So describing a time when you were able to overcome something that was a major challenge. You know, what did you learn? What personal strengths did you draw upon? How might you apply these now? So you may have seen these questions, but hopefully this is just a reminder of some things you can ask yourself if you want to use this positive thinking strategy to overcome scarcity, fear of failure, or the last one that we talked about in terms of lack of personal responsibility. We can also list our accomplishments. Like, so making this list of great accomplishments, when was the last time you actually celebrated the things that you have done well? And you probably have forgotten about it because you probably haven't been doing it. Because we just go on with life and we're like, yeah, that was great, but I have so many other great things to do. And if you're an awesome leader, I'm sure that's what you've been thinking, like, don't pat me on the back, I want to keep it moving. But there is something to be said when you sit back and actually celebrate yourself and celebrate your organization, or celebrate your colleagues, or celebrate your employees with the things that have been done well. And so if you haven't done that lately, this might be a really great time to kind of boost that morale by doing that and helping people continue to adapt well. Another bonus is the VIA character strengths assessment. And so this is a free assessment that you can do. You can go ahead and Google it, that you can do to show you what your character strengths are. And so if you haven't done an assessment in a while, this might be a good one to really just help you get reacclimated with what you are and who you are and what you do well and how you show up, because you may find that some of these character strengths will really help you start tapping in to the things that you haven't tapped into in a while. Any thoughts or comments about accomplishments, or have you done any of these activities? And you can take yourself off mute.
You know, I find that, this is Barbara, I find that it's helpful to do the writing prompts and to really realize that you do have some strengths. You do have some ways that you've done it in the past, and you can hopefully rely on them again. And it's just, you're right, the stickiness of negative that can be hard to overcome. So I think I don't always use the writing prompts when I most need them. Isn't there's a saying that the time you need to use it the most is the time you're least apt to want to. Mm. So that's something that I probably need to get a little bit better at. But that's my thought about the writing prompts.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. You know, creating a process in which we do it with some kind of regularity definitely helps it become something that is just like a process or a habit, so to speak. Yeah.
I think another great opportunity might be to have somebody who knows you or knows the situation possibly do them for you. I know that I've often looked at others and said, wow, I can't believe they did that. It looks so hard and complex. I wish I had that skill set. And then when somebody will say, oh, they can't believe that I did something. Oh, it was nothing, you know, it came easily, or I forgot the struggle to get there. Or, you know, you feel like, you know, self-praise is false praise, so I tend to diminish it. So it might be great to do it with somebody outside yourself, so it adds a little extra credibility, maybe.
That's a great idea, Lori. I love that. We tend to be more critical of ourselves, right?
And much more generous of others.
Much.
This is Barbara Swenson. I'm very performance driven, and so I like to keep that list of accomplishments, and especially for the team I'm working with. So to review that regularly, and when times get tough, to really go back and review that to rebuild the momentum and keep the group from falling into that negative emotional area. So a listing of the accomplishments, I love to keep a running list.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that you don't just keep a running list, Barbara, but you use it. You know, because sometimes we make stuff up. So something I work with my personal clients and my Franklin Covey clients. We do a lot of work around personal mission. I mean, if you know 7 Habits, then you know personal mission is really big. And in my personal practice, I love to use personal mission. But there's something about a personal mission that you never read. It's just like, what's the point? You know, like people are in whole organizations with missions that nobody knows. And so I love that you have a list of accomplishments that is ongoing and you actually use them. Look at that. All right. So moving on. So the other positive thinking strategy is like not a new one, right? Gratitude. So gratitude, it really allows us to have a reframe. And I love using gratitude as a reframe because things can happen. And if we could think about like, well, what good really did happen, or what was great today, or what could have learned from that, or what am I grateful for having experienced that failure? What could I be grateful for even in that space? And so I always say, like, let gratefulness be your guide, because this is a positive thinking strategy that if you use it on a regular, you actually can become way more solution minded when you're thinking about what is it that has gone well. It's almost like appreciative inquiry, you know, like what has gone well, right? So it's in that same wheelhouse. If we can think about what has gone well, we can let that be our guide for every day. And so I love this activity. I do this with my clients almost every time we meet. It's kind of like our icebreaker. So it's really great, I think, with your employees, or if you do training. But I actually journal, but I have them do this out loud. So basically, I tell people to think about something that they're grateful for, and they say why they're grateful for it. So that's actually a turn and talk that I do with my clients. So that's something that you can do with your clients or your employees, like a turn and talk, like, hey, name something that you're grateful for and why. Turn and talk to your, partner, or if you're doing Zoom, have people go in breakout rooms and talk about it. Then I have a round two. And in my round two, I talk about how do I want to show up differently now? And so it's really this thought about how we can have a paradigm shift because gratitude gives us the opportunity to reframe our situations. And so if we think about what we're grateful for and why, after we find that answer, how do we want to show up differently? And so let me give you an example. Last year in October, my grandmother of 90 years passed away. And so it was not great, but it was like, I was grateful to have her for 90 years. About 4 weeks later, I had a cousin who was 40 years old that died in a car crash. So that was way more like unexpected and traumatic and all of that. And so with that, I had this season of just wanting to think about, well, what am I grateful for? And so in that season, I was like, you know what? I travel with Franklin Covey. I typically travel 70% of the time, mostly driving and flying, right? No trains, just on the road or in the air. And so I was just grateful that every day that I wasn't in a car accident. Like I was just grateful for, having been able to be safe and safely getting to where I am. And I also was just grateful for the time that I was able to spend with those family members while they were here. And so the way I wanted to show up differently is that even though I'm traveling, I want to make sure that I every day have a touch point with a family or friend that I love. That was my way of like, I want to show up like that. I don't want to get to this place where I'm so tired from traveling that I don't accept a call from a family member, or I don't feel like talking. And we all get there, right? You don't even want to talk to the people in your house half the time because it's like, I'm tired, I'm spent, I've been on a screen all day. But this thing about gratefulness helps you to show up differently. It has a different shift in your thinking. So I think that this is a really powerful activity. So I want to hear from you all. What kind of activities have you done around gratefulness, or what have you found that works?
This is Susie Brunsvold. I'm sorry I had to jump off early and jump back on.
It's all good.
But what I do every night, and I think it might be better to do it another time because nighttime is, you're tired. But I list 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that I did well, and a goal that I want to accomplish, but I treat it as though I've already accomplished it.
I love that.
So some days it can be a little tough, but it's good to, it's good to say, okay, I did the laundry. It was okay. That was good.
That happened.
Not always a big achievement.
Right. But yeah, it's the journey. I love that. I'm gonna tuck that away.
Good. Sure. Hope it helps.
Thank you. Anybody else have done anything with gratefulness, or how does this resonate with you?
I like the why also.
Okay.
Because I haven't heard that before.
Okay. Oh, the gratefulness and why. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, when I've worked with clients, that's actually the hardest part, is for people to actually, oh, I got to think about the why, because initially, they're like, oh, my kids or my family. And it's just like, well, why? It makes people have to take it another layer.
Yeah, so you got to get past the softballs too. I try to have it different every day. You don't have to. You can be grateful for the same thing, one of the same things, 3 things every day. But I just try to challenge myself a little differently. And I like the why. I'm going to incorporate that.
Good.
This is Lori. Sometimes at the end of the day, the victory is you just got through the day. Some days are just really bad, lousy, everything goes wrong days, and the fact that you're still willing to get up tomorrow and try again is an accomplishment. And so say, okay, it wasn't the day you had planned, wasn't what you wanted, but okay, we're still, I guess, resilient. We're still here. We're still, hanging in.
Good point.
In fact, Lori, you do something with a jar. Do you mind telling them about it?
Oh, nice.
So my sister actually started it. I was very frustrated. And so what she did was she gave me a jar filled with positive statements. And so the idea to go in and take one when you're feeling really bad and you need that little jolt. So I've gone through all of hers, and I've started to, every morning I take an inspirational quote, and was going to give it to Barbara as a birthday present, but unfortunately COVID interfered and we had to change our lunch plans. But it does help to have something that someone, clearly, had a bad day or had an interesting outlook, and they're all across the board, from religion to inspirational to women, work-related, life-related. And it is a nice way to start. And I do keep a journal, and I write it in the journal every day, or most days. There's some days, I get caught up and don't get to it. But I've stopped beating myself up for missing those days. It's like, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be successful. So I think that's the other piece, is letting yourself off the hook. It doesn't have to be all just whatever fits.
I love that. Letting yourself off the hook. Giving yourself some grace, right?
Exactly.
Zoe, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say you could tie in your idea about making time for your family. You could tie that into the reasons why you're grateful each day. If you think about a different person that you're grateful for, why not reach out to them and tell them that? They might not hear it from you. You give your mom a Mother's Day card and you write in there, I'm so grateful you're my mom, but I'm sure, they would love to hear it anytime that they're on your mind, or your cousin, your best friend, someone you went to school with. Just if you're thinking about how you're grateful for them, just reach out and tell them.
Yeah, love that.
I like that, Zoe. I would say that since COVID has started, it has made me call people more. Text less, email less. When I think of someone that's important, I call them, and that's made a big difference for me.
Absolutely. I love that. Our phones actually call people.
Yes,
they
that
do
was
more.
What the purpose was at one time.
At one time, that's what it was for, and suddenly they don't call people. But yes, I love that. And I would encourage you all to do this number 2, because this question 2 is powerful. In how are you going to make this something how are you going to take that, this sense of gratefulness, this sense of why, and shift your paradigm and show up differently, and be someone that takes on the identity of someone that you actually want to become. And so, one of the greatest ways to change habits, there's a lot of ways to change habits. I'm sure I know you know about the 7 habits. I don't know if you heard of Atomic Habits. Great book, Atomic Habits. But he talks about in Atomic Habit, I don't know why the author is escaping me right now, but he talks about one of the greatest ways to change a habit is to create an identity around that habit. And so it's this concept of, if I want to be more fit, if I take on the identity of a fit person, fit people do certain things. And so you tend to do less of what a fit person wouldn't do, because it's like, I'm going to identify as this. And so I believe when you do number 2, thinking about how you want to show up differently, it does push you to think about, like, what is this identity? And so, like in my example, mine was, I want to be someone that people don't think is too busy to talk to. I've gotten that before, like, oh, you're always too busy. And it's just like, no, I'm not. I know how to stop and call people and spend time with people. And it's like, I want to have this identity of being someone that people know is relational. So I would encourage you to use that one and Atomic Habits. Awesome. Oh, James Clear. Thank you, Joe. James Clear is the author. It was totally, I was blanking. Yes, great book. I really enjoyed it a lot. He has a great story too. All right. So then the last positive thinking strategy is mindset. And so some of these things can already be assumed with mindset, but the thought is, how can we counter these unhelpful thinking thoughts that we have, or these unhelpful thoughts that come as a result to come, snatch away what we believe can actually be something we can control. So this lack of personal responsibility, remember that was one of the barriers. Sometimes that's just a shift in our thinking about how we could actually have control. So, with Franklin Covey, there's the habit 2, habit 1 is when we have this circle of control. One of the highly effective practices of habit 1 is circle of control. What can we control? It's be proactive is the actual habit. And the way that we can be proactive is thinking about what we can control versus what we can't control. What is in our circle of influence, right? And so when we think about this lack of personal responsibility, we can use this positive thinking strategy of our mindset and thinking about, well, what can we actually do versus the unhelpful thinking of, oh, I have no control over this, or I don't know how this is going to happen. Why won't they do something about it? Who is they, right? So we want to see how we can do something about it with the change in our thinking. Oh, thank you, Susan. Is it Susan or Suzanne?
It doesn't matter.
It matters. Yes, Franklin. Yep, got it. Okay.
Cool. The little small one that I'm thinking of.
Okay.
It's wonderful, and it's not out of date after 1 year. Because it's just the dates all the way through.
Okay, nice.
You use it every year, every day.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure which one that is, but if you have it around, then
I do. I'll send you a picture of it. How about that?
Yeah, I would love to see it. Look, I don't have their stuff. Isn't that sad?
No, you probably have seen it, and you have some other tools that, that one went by the wayside. No problem.
Okay, cool. No, I would love to see it. Sure. So when we think about that, this is one activity I really like. It's called What If? And that's just when we start thinking about this worst case scenario, or like, why won't people let this happen? How we can start thinking about, well, what could be possible? So we think about this worst case scenario and we ask ourselves the question, what would I do if that actually happened, right? And I'm sure we've taken ourselves through this process. So it might be just a reminder of maybe something that you're already kind of sitting in, but haven't made any moves on. But let's just think about it like, well, what would happen if that worst case scenario did occur? Or what would happen if the best thing actually happened? And so the last question is really like, well, what's one thing I can do to get closer to that? And when I say that, meaning closer to the best thing that could happen, right? What's the one thing that I could do to get closer to that outcome versus the worst case scenario? And it's really helpful because it gives you a solution. Because a lot of times if we think about what would you do if the worst case scenario happened, we would all come up with a solution, right? Ooh, if I lost my job, what would I do? Or, if we don't want to be homeless, it's like, well, I could live in my car for at least a month. Or, we would figure it out some kind of way. And, the human race is so inspirational. There are so many stories of people that have had things happen to them and they have come out of so many interesting situations, right? And so I just believe that we all can figure it out. But sometimes we just don't let ourselves figure it out. We just get stuck in the worst case. So I think that this is a good opportunity for, if you're thinking about something that's worst case scenario, start thinking about, well, what's the best case scenario and how can I get closer to that? So what is the one thing that I can do to get closer there? And so for this one, I actually had 2 activities. So the second one is one I like to call the lie, the truth, and the proof. And so I like this a lot when you're trying to defeat limiting beliefs. And so if we know, most of us not should know, but I'm assuming most of you know what limiting beliefs are. And if not, just the things that keep us from actually doing what we know we can do because of these false beliefs, right? These false truths. And so I love this one. And I do this a lot. It helps me create affirmations, and it helps me have something kind of like you, Barbara, when you have those lists of accomplishments that you look at. I like to keep this as something I can go back to. just in case I start having imposter syndrome or all those other fun things that make us feel like we can't do it. So name the thought. So I call the thought the lie. And the reason I do is because a lot of times these thoughts are in absolutes. So we talk about, oh, this will never end, or this always happens, or that can't be me. And I think that those things are like far right and far left, all the way on the wrong end. So that's why I call it a lie, because it's just like, I mean, well, how do you know it would never happen, right? So an example would be like, my financial troubles seem like they will never end. And it's just like, well, it might seem like it. Maybe that's kind of true, but to say that they'll never end, it's like, that's like a lie. So name what will happen or what's possible that could happen. Like, I'll get back on my feet, or I will fill in the blank. Name what it is that you desire to happen or what could possibly happen. So just really getting into this space of visualizing what's possible. So that's what that truth is. At least it'll be your truth, because that's going to be what you are reaching for. And so the other part is, I say name a past success, because that's the proof in the earth that this is possible, because it's something that I've overcome before. So I lost my job 5 years ago, and I managed to figure out how to thrive for 6 months using my skills as a consultant, right? So maybe that's happened to you before. And so you get to use that. My other thing is, I've had clients that are saying like, well, Des, no, I've not been able to do that either. This has never happened to me before. So I'm like, well, find somebody else that it has happened before, because proximity is power. If we know or we've seen it happen for someone else, that means it is possible for us. And it doesn't matter about resources. It doesn't matter about social economic. Those are contributing factors. So those are realities. So don't get it wrong. Those are realities. The point is, it's possible. And so the fact that it's possible that someone did it means that there is a system or there is a process that I need to find or I need to figure out for myself to allow this to also be a truth for me as well. So the lie, the truth, and the proof, great way to take limiting beliefs and transform them, reframe them into a way that you actually now have evidence of, okay, I know I can do this. Like if you ever start thinking like, oh, it seems like I'll never get out, it's like, no, that's not it. Right? You can pull yourself out of the ground. So those are the 2 activities I have for that. Any thoughts about that? Anything that you've done that's similar, or things you want to add that maybe you've done to overcome limiting beliefs in the past? All right, you all have it together then.
I was gonna say, sometimes just talking to somebody, because you can't see the forest for the trees. So sometimes it's almost I'm not gonna say it's better, but sometimes it's good to not just talk to someone who is just gonna be sympathetic, but someone who will push back on you and really force you to think differently.
I love that. The pushback is real.
I like what you said about in the other activity about getting one step closer to the best case scenario, because it makes you think about not just this huge lofty goal of I need to get to the best case scenario, because you're probably never going to get there, but you're also never going to get to the worst case scenario either. You're going to be somewhere in the middle. But if you make a little task that gets you closer, and then you make another little task that gets you closer, you can string those smaller tasks together to get closer to the best case scenario. Instead of just making it this impossible goal, it becomes more possible. The little things help it become more possible.
Yeah, I love that, Zoe. The little steps matter, right? And something else that I had people do when they struggle with kind of figuring out like what their ability to do what's next. I go back to that kind of accomplishments list, and I have them think about like, well, what have you done, and what skills and characteristics did you have to do that? How can that transfer to what you're trying to do now, right? Because if you've done something like that before, or if you've never done something like this before, you've had skills that transfer to your ability to be able to accomplish said thing. So I think that that's important too when you think about that. So yeah, that is the 2 activities that I have there. So I want you to throw in the chat, which activity are you prompted to do? Which ones do you like in the chat that you're like, you know what, I'm going to start doing this more often. Like this is the one, this is my takeaway activity. Even if you have your own variation, feel free.
How do you show up? I think that's very important.
Okay.
And sometimes you don't always have the benefit of of seeing yourself in real time unless you're on Zoom and don't hide your face. So that kind of tells you how you show up. And Zoe, I just want to say, I don't think there's any impossible goals for you. So every
thank
little
you.
step gets you there, but it'll happen, whatever it is.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You have my vote of support and confidence.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, that show up differently. And then I see in the chat, all of them, the lie, the truth, and the proof. Oh, yes. Check out the VIA strength. Has anybody done that before? The strengths assessment, the VIA one, the VIA character strengths. It's a good one.
I don't know that.
Look, my number one is humor. It's my number one. But I think it's great. They give you your top 5 and you can start thinking about how you move and breathe with that. And it's actually really good for bios too. You can add some of those strengths to your bio. I think is helpful. And then if you want to think about kind of like your value proposition, what kind of separates you from people, I think I like using the character strengths for that too. Being disciplined about my gratefulness, a grateful for list is key. Absolutely. Building a broader local network. Awesome. All right. I agree with Barbara. Different times require different techniques. Absolutely. And gratefulness, surround myself with people that are positive. Absolutely. Yeah, proximity is power. Thank you for saying that, Barbara. You know, the people that you're around. So I have this thing that I call complainaholics. And these are people that whine. And they don't get drunk off of the wine. W-I-N-E is W-H-I-N-E. And so I'm always like, you know, watch out for the complainaholics because they get drunk off of wine. So we definitely want to surround people. And it's not that, you know, things happen. So I always want to be clear, like this is not about ignoring things that happen in life that are real, you know, but it is how do we adapt well, right, so that we can move forward. When stuck, advance to the date that the goal was achieved and work back to the start. Absolutely. Begin with the end in mind. Love it.
Yes.
Amy. Absolutely. Cool. Awesome. All right. So are there any questions? Because that is the end, ladies and gents. That is all I have for you. So this is just a little bit about me. Some of you I'm actually connected with on LinkedIn already, but if you wanted to connect with any other social media platform, that is where I am. So it was a pleasure. Thanks for taking lunch to be here, guys. And Sue, I see your message. Thank you.
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.